You've road tripped across the US for 10 years. You live abroad now in Norway. You've hitchhiked around Scotland, 3.5 months in Patagonia. I mean, that's enough adventure for 10 different people's lifetimes, let alone one. Apart from the challenge of leading up to the challenge, or the journey before the journey, or the call to adventure, I guess you could say, what's some of the biggest lessons that you've learned from taking a lot of these quote unquote risks, I guess, and jetting off and doing your own thing and traveling and living that nomadic lifestyle? What have you learned through that process? I guess every time you would get a little bit deeper into the onion that is travel. But what was your take on all of that?
Yeah, this is interesting. This goes back to what we were talking about before a bit with the ever-changing landscape and that ever-changing background that's going on around us, the global background, let's say, the societal background. In this case, I would say that because I was nomadic for 10 years, I was doing these jobs as a touring professional, managing these events, like I said, the band thing, all that stuff. And back then, I wasn't choosing to be a nomad. I didn't start my first gig that I talked about going to the Kmart parking lots to be like, now I'm embarking on my nomadic lifestyle. It didn't work like that. It just unfolded in real time. I was choosing it. I kept choosing travel in each moment I had the opportunity, or when I faced the choice. Do I keep traveling? Do I take another gig that puts me on the road? Do I spend this in-between time going to another country to explore? Or do I, finally get an apartment and settle down? I'm using air quotes. And I just kept choosing travel. So my decade as a nomad kind of happened in real time until all of a sudden, I'm halfway in and I'm just like, I still don't own a car. I still don't own a home. I'm still having fun. So I'm just going to keep doing this. And that is different than intentional lifestyle design, let's say. And I think that was more me going with the flow. And this is where the landscape or the background today, let's call it the background noise in some ways, can inform you, but it can also be a distraction. Because sometimes maybe intentionally designing every aspect of your lifestyle isn't the answer.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe it's tuning into what you actually want. I do think there are big lessons from intentional lifestyle design, and I do think it has an important role. And now that that's a thing, I think that people are more aware of, I can take a meta look at my life. And it sounds so obvious, right? You could always do that, but I didn't think of it that way back then. That's why these podcasts like this are great. You can think about it that way. You could take a meta view of your life and intentionally design it. And I think that's a smart way to go about doing it. Like, you want to prioritize travel or whatever it is and try to fit everything around that instead of doing it the other way around. And I think people have gotten a lot better at doing that now just because they're more aware that that's an option. But don't forget also to check in with yourself and go with the flow. And I think one of the biggest lessons that I learned from the nomadic journey is that the conventional path isn't for everybody. And that's okay, because it might feel weird when you go against the grain. And at times you might feel self-doubt like I did and feel behind. You're like, well, my friends are all advancing their careers and I'm doing this weird thing and it's not leading anywhere and this and that and the other. But everything you do has value. And you don't know how it's going to benefit you later on. So on some level, you just have to trust in yourself and your own journey. Yes, intentionally design your life and try to make it in a way that your everyday life is mostly doing things you enjoy as much as possible. But also there's an element of sort of intuition and openness that can complement that, I think. Does any of that make sense, or was that just
I had so many light bulbs going off when you were talking, because I work in the intentional life design space, right? And sometimes I think we over curate our life. And as a travel advisor, I find this a lot. People expect you, and maybe this is just the marketing that is done around travel advising, but people expect you to curate every single minute of their trip. And for me as an advisor, I actually refuse to do that, because that takes the magic. I
refuse to curate your trip.
I've got some hot takes on that, because I encourage at least one day, have a fully free day, because that is the joy of travel, is the spontaneity and using your intuition. What do I actually feel like today? Do I really want to go on my 4th tour of this trip?
Yeah.
And that same goes for your life. Like you said, I think sometimes it's important to have intentionality behind your life, of course, and especially when things don't feel right. Like when you're feeling a little bit of that inner conflict, that's usually a sign. Take a step back, have that meta view, like you said. But also sometimes we've gotten so prescribed with our life that we don't take a moment to check in, like you said, and be like, wait a minute, is this goal that I had still even the goal that I want? Or did I just say I was going to do this and I'm going to stick to it with every single, ounce of my being because that's what I said I was going to do with my intentionality? So I think travel and the way in which that you've traveled as well, Jason, I think gives you that reservoir of experience to lean back on that, like, okay, I didn't know where my next step was going to lead me and it turned out pretty freaking cool. So I'm okay with a little bit of uncertainty. I'm okay with a little bit of risk. And every time you take those trips, a hiking trip or even just your first trip to the next state over, allows you to build that experience up to realize that the flow is what life is all about. And there you can have like structured flow if you really need to have a little bit more structure.